Welcome to the Company of Women once again. It's always such a pleasure to have you join us. And the Company of Women International is just so pleased to be able to have a TV program in the Richmond area. Also, we have a group of women that like to get together. And as you know, we've been saying now for quite a while that it's real people with real needs and real victories. That's a simple way to put it, but this really is the truth. And we are so delighted with the people that we have been able to have as our guests and to introduce you to, that you might be able to relate to some of the things that are in their lives. And again today, we have, marvelous. We have Dr. Rufus Womble with us, and he is at All Saints Episcopal Church on River Road. We're delighted to have him in. I don't want it to end, but it might end. We'll see. There's so much that he has to share with us. There's such a wealth. I hope that many of you will have an opportunity to get to meet him, get some of his books, and come and enjoy talking with him. Rufus, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, it's good to be here.
You
good to be with you.
You got some more one-liners.
Yes, appreciate what you're having to do. You know, in England, they call the bishop my lord the bishop.
Okay.
And the bishop was visiting in a rural section. Spent the night there, we had service the next day, and there was no running water upstairs. And so the little boy in the household was given the task of heating the water and taking it up for the bishop to wash and shave, so forth. And the little boy was very conscientious, and he memorized a little talk. He was to knock on the door and say, "My Lord, this is the boy with the water. My Lord, this is the boy with the water." Sunday morning came, the little boy got up early and heated the water, went up and knocked on the door, and this voice boomed out and says, "Who is that?" The little boy was excited. He said, "It's the Lord, my boy."
I can just imagine when that happened.
Yeah, and then the story is told of this man driving the highway, down the highway without a seatbelt on. Policeman saw him and pulled him down. Said, "I'm going to have to give you a ticket for not having your seatbelt on." And he said, "Oh, but I have it on." See, when they saw the cop coming, he put the seatbelt on. And he said, "Oh, but I have it on." The policeman said, "But you didn't." He said, "Oh, yes, I did." "No, you didn't." So they were arguing. And so the policeman said to the man's wife sitting on the front seat, says, "You look like an honest woman." Said, "Would you tell me whether or not he had that seatbelt on?" She said, "Don't get me involved in this." Says, "I'll never argue with him when he's drunk."
So she fixed him good.
And then this story is told of this boy and girl who were engaged to get married, and the girl invited her fiancé to come to meet the family and have dinner with them, and so they did, and after the dinner was over, the father of the bride-to-be said, "I'd like to have a little talk with you." And so they had a little talk together, and the father said, "What do you do for a living?" He said, "Well, I am a research scholar. I am given to the deeper truths, and I go behind the surface down to the deep realities of things." And he said, "I'm a research scholar." And the father said, "Well, how in the world have you been making the money, to take care of my daughter?" He said, "Oh, God will provide. God will provide." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do when the children come along?" He said, "Oh, God will provide. God will provide." And that was it. And so after it was over, the man's wife says, "Well, how'd you get along with the young fellow?" And he said, "He doesn't have any money. He doesn't have a way of making any money." He said, "But on the other hand, he thinks I'm God."
That might be true in a lot of cases. Oh, you're delightful. I have difficulty remembering these one-liners to even repeat to someone else, but I enjoy them so.
Well, thank you. I love to laugh, and a lot of healing through laughter.
Yes, there is. And I think this is something that we don't have nearly as much of today as we have a need for.
That's true. Preaching is a very serious thing. And as a rule, the preacher tightens up and the congregation tightens up.
And then you get sickness.
And joke, it just relaxes the whole situation. And the body can start functioning right, and the preacher can, and everybody is sort of relaxed, and the message can get through.
Jesus can get into their hearts, can't
Yeah,
he?
that's right.
You are wearing a medallion that has caught my eye from the very beginning when I saw you wearing it. Would you please tell us about this medallion?
Yeah, this is a medallion for the Order of St. Luke the Physician, the healing movement, composed of people of all denominations. And the circle symbolizes the love of God, which has no end. And then we have the empty cross there, Christ raised from the dead, who lives today. And then we have some Latin words, Dux, Christ is our leader, Lex, Christ is our light, no law, Rex, Christ is our king, Lux, Christ is our light, and then here on the circle, Jesus Christ heals today. So there's a lot of symbolism in this thing, and in the Order of St. Luke, this is what we're trying to do, is to carry on the ministry of healing of Jesus in our day. So we have people of all denominations. It's a wonderful thing. It's amazing what God is doing in and through this fellowship.
It certainly is. And for your information, I have the address of, it's the International Order of St. Luke the Physician, Post Office Box 13701, San Antonio, Texas 78213. And it's this order that, did I understand you correctly, Rufus, that you had given to them your books?
Yeah, I gave them all the books. I got too heavy to handle.
Too many to carry around, so you're giving it to them, and so they can distribute your books to whoever they want, and help spread the word that you have written.
So they carry on my ministry, even though I'm not doing it. They're doing it for me, which is nice. And of course, the box is 40 pounds of materials in the box that I have to carry to the post office, and I just said, I needed a little help. So I gave away and got rid of them, and, but they're carrying on, they're selling them and so forth. Very reasonable.
Well, they're wonderful booklets, and I'm certain that they're a great help to so many. But there's something else I want you to talk to us about. You've had so many experiences through these many years, and people that you have known. Tell us some of these experiences that where God has healed people, and some that stand out to your mind. Could you think of any right now?
Yes. I started off by, as I said, when I was healed, and I spread the message, but I didn't have healing services. Agnes Sanford says, Rufus, you don't have to have a service. Just pray for people for healing in the hospitals, in the homes, and so forth. And I was a great pastor, did a lot of visiting in my day. So just do that. But Dr. Richard, a Richmond doctor, who now lives down in Stony Creek or something.
Yes.
So he called me up and said, Rufus, I have a man in my office with high blood pressure, and if something doesn't happen, he's going to have a stroke and die. He said, would you have a healing service for him? I said, I'd be glad to. And so Dr. Richard told me what to have. He's a Methodist. But he told me, he said, I want you to share your experience with him, what God has done for you, and I want you to lay your hands on his head and pray, ask God to heal him. And so a man came over the next day with his wife and his son, and I shared my experience, and I laid my hands on his head and asked God to heal him. And Dr. Richard said the blood pressure went down on both counts, and the man was able to go back to work the next day. And so that was one thing. And then Dr. Richard played a big part in my life in the beginning. He asked me to go to see one of his patients who'd been, I think, had quite a few operations. And she was dying, and she didn't know Jesus. And so he asked me if I would go to see her. So I went to see her and talked to her about Jesus, accepting Jesus as who died for our sins. Not only died for our sins, but he died for our healings. You know, by his stripes we're healed. So often the church just emphasizes the redemption part of Jesus, but the healing, wounded for our transgression, bruised for our iniquities. By his stripes we're healed. And so I went to see the lady, and so she accepted Jesus. And I went back to see her the next week, and she said, oh, Mr. Womble says, I have peace now, but I'm so scared of going through the act of dying. And I said, well, there are two things that we have to offer. One is Jesus says, you'll not suffer beyond what you're able to stand. And the second thing is Jesus will be right with you. You won't be alone. And so she made a commitment for that. Well, shortly after that, she went to the hospital, and she says, Rufus, I don't have any pain. Says, nobody can understand it, but says, I'm dying there, and I don't have any pain, you know. And she was just astounded. She said, but you know, and I know, why I don't have any. And so she died, but she died without being afraid. She died without pain. She had a healing of the spirit, which was one of the greatest for all eternity.
That's what you call a victorious homegoing.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And then Dr. Ritchie again, you know, I said he played a big part. He said, now, Rufus, I have a lot of patients who have not responded to medicine or medical treatment. And I want you to go with me and pray for these people. Okay. And he said, I'll give you half the fees. I said, well, no, don't get involved with the money part. And so I remember the first lady we went to see. She was depressed. She'd been housebound for 9 months.
Oh, gosh.
And so Dr. Richard just said to her, says, you have not responded to medicine or medical treatment. And today I have Mr. Womble with me, and if you'd like to, we'd like to pray for God to heal you. And so he said, if you'd like to pray, would you kneel down? So the lady knelt down, and Dr. Richard knelt down, laid his hand on one side of her head, and I was on the other side, knelt down, put my hand on the other side of her head, and Dr. Richard made a prayer, and I made a prayer. And within a week's time, this woman was completely liberated, back out in life again. It was just marvelous, you know, what had happened to her. Been stymied for all that time, but through the healing power of God, she was set free. And then there was another case, a woman who had arthritis for 2 years. So I was asked to go to see her. So I went to see her, and I shared my experience, and I laid my hand on her head and asked God to heal her. And within 2 weeks' time, this woman was up and all that, you know. It was just marvelous, marvelous what was happening. And then something bad happened. People started saying, you know, get Rufus to pray for you. Get Rufus to pray for you. They didn't say get Jesus to heal you.
Okay.
Say get Rufus to pray for you. And so we had to get Rufus out of the way.
Yes.
And get Rufus out of the way. And get him out of the way of the people. And sometimes it's, oh, we know you're not doing it, and so forth. But so as soon as we got Rufus out of the way, these miracles continue to happen.
Yes.
And that was 50 years ago.
50 years.
And hardly a day goes by when I do not witness some miracle or healing of the spirit, victory over fear, and people come for counseling, and all sorts of things happen. And so I know that one thing that a woman in Little Rock had a baby on Wednesday, and I was called to the hospital by the doctor on Thursday night.